Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Delete This podcast. Uh, as you guys can tell from the title, the US is becoming more and more ghetto. It turns out that our free speech has been under attack for a long time now, but we are coming to a head to it. So we're going to get into that in today's episode. And then we're also going to talk about the future of AI. Basically, they want to own everything and us to not own anything. And I want to give a little bit more context to this meme that I found of Peter Griffin, which is basically all of us in the next 3 years. We will be most likely arrested, charged for things that we never committed, but the AI photo, the incriminating AI video, will have us in a chokehold. More when we come back. All right, I want to start off and thank you guys so much for joining us for today's episode. If you guys want to stay connected with us, please join us out on our social media platforms. We're going to share a QR code that you guys can scan and connect with us on our various different platforms. But if you guys are catching us or listening to us through audio, then go ahead and just find me in the bio and find the socials there. So we share clips, keep the conversation going, or I think we will be rolling out more and more short form content. So hopefully we'll have that for you guys soon. But to get into today's topic, I want to talk to you guys about, as I am now terming her, Maria Corina Machado, who is the Venezuelan Malinche. And the reason why I am calling her the Venezuelan Malinche, we're going to get into the story of Malinche if you guys are not familiar with it, but she basically awarded her Nobel Peace Prize to President Donald Trump. And this comes after a long-standing beef that President Trump has had with, I guess, the people or the organization that hand out the Nobel Peace Prizes, because he had been bitter about not receiving one for many years now. And he was like, oh, why did President Obama receive his in, I think, his first year serving in office? He received his Nobel Peace Prize. And why has President Trump not received his Nobel Peace Prize? I mean, I think the Nobel Peace Prize is a bunch of BS because usually the people that get it are somewhat affiliated, always with wars, always with never-ending, associated with never-ending chaos. But there are some people who do win it, who definitely do deserve it. But I mean, people like Winston Churchill, who has a track record of basically mass murder allegedly after World War II and so forth. So there's a very mixed group of people that get it. But Maria Corina Machado, she stated her not being selected as the new Venezuelan president. Uh, the reason why that happened was because apparently she had received the Nobel Peace Prize instead of Trump, and that made Trump bitter. So in her attempt now at grabbing power in Venezuela and being considered as the new leader of Venezuela, as kind of the most known opposition leader in the US, she, as we reported, gave over her Nobel Peace Prize that she had won just months ago. So this is a photo from that meeting. Basically, if you read that description, it just says oh, on behalf of Maria Machado, she's giving this award to the president. So if you guys are not familiar with the story of Malinche, it's a very common story in Latin America. A lot of people are familiar with Malinche because she was notably the person that assisted with the Spanish conquistadors when they came to the Americas during the Aztec and Mayan rule. But according to my research, Malinche, she was born into a noble family, so she was familiar with the noble, I guess the a higher version of the Nahuatl language, and she kind of had a knack for languages. So I think I had learned, was actually offered up as a slave as a young girl. So she had this upbringing in in a noble family, but then for whatever reason she was then offered up as a slave, and then she became fluent in both primary languages of that region, Yucatec and Nahuatl. And then when like the Spanish conquistadors ended up coming to like Latin America, she then assisted them with like negotiations. A lot of times they said that like she would just negotiate kind of on her own. And the Spanish conquistadors really, really held her up. And she ended up being an example of somebody that kind of put her own put her own will, I guess, ahead of her people, because she's cited as the person that helped eventually bring down like the Aztec Empire. I think she helped with the assassination of Moctezuma, and also helped with other helped to like put down other rebellions that were happening in the region that she was native to, but obviously like the Spanish were not native to. So I say all this just to bring back the current history of Maria Machado, because a lot of Venezuelans, although they are in support of taking down Nicolas Maduro because he was known to have potentially been corrupt or have ties to the cartels. Yeah, they don't necessarily support Maria Machado because they view her as somebody who is just willing to put the US ahead of the Venezuelan people, of the oil that is specifically being targeted in Venezuela. And it doesn't seem as though she is necessarily caring about the interests of the Venezuelan people. At least she's seemingly like sucking up to President Trump and to also Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But as I've stated, this is the issue that happens with a lot of politicians, is that they are pretty much just bred to become ass kissers. And when they are in positions of power, they don't then challenge authority because they are solely bred to comply, to make sure that they are fulfilling whatever like political position they are currently serving at that time. And I wanted to also give a little bit of an update and talk about Venezuela, because there's a lot of things that I feel like the media hasn't necessarily been great at following up with or reporting. Some of that information, I think a lot of people associate the capture of Nicolas Maduro as like, okay, the US carried out this very well thought out, planned out mission to capture the president. And there's actually a lot of people who have done content on the exact operation that the U.S. ended up enacting. I recommend you guys to check out that full scale operation because it was definitely a military grade operation. But what a lot of people are not necessarily reporting on is that there were deaths of soldiers that were associated with the capture of Nicolas Maduro. So far, it seems that there has been nearly 50 Venezuelan soldiers that were killed in the abduction of Nicolas Maduro, which so far is outpacing the given stat of like 20 something soldiers. And then also, interestingly enough, I'm sorry, there were 50 Venezuelan soldiers, and then 32 of the other soldiers were Cuban that were helping to protect Nicolas Maduro. So there was a total of 83 people that it looks like were killed as part of the US's attack to abduct Nicolas Maduro. So, like I said, it is currently outpacing the current estimate of 20 something soldiers. And I feel like this kind of makes sense because what president is going to go down without somewhat of a fight? But it seems as though the US's military operation in Venezuela was, like I said, very sophisticated. They used technology that hadn't necessarily been well known to the public, although people can kind of assume that technology was already in play for a U.S. military. But one important technology that was part of that capture was some sonar weaponry that was used actually to ensure that the soldiers that were on the ground there were not able to react physically to like the U.S. troops that were then storming like the capital of Caracas. But that sonar technology, according to my research, it turns out that it basically emits some kind of radio frequency that causes additional buildup of like blood vessels in the brain. And so people have reported like feeling like extremely nauseous. They have like fatigue. Some people died from like the attack of this sonar weaponry. But it definitely gives pause to understand that when we are considering this really this war that apparently like the U.S. citizens are kind of going up against uh, within their own government, or just like the kind of universal war that is currently brewing among people who are just regular civilians who are like, wait, are we actually just enslaved people and don't really have any rights or ownership to anything? And then there's like the 1%, or not even the 1%, but there's people who secretly have their hand in puppeteering the rest of the world. And then we have our politicians who do nothing but enable those people because they really actually don't have as much power. And I think that this kind of technology definitely worries me when I see it, because I'm like, okay, like, what does that mean for a civilian population that attempts to weed out a tyrannical government? Do we actually have the capabilities to be able to do something like that? Because as we have seen with Israel in Gaza, as we have seen now with the US and how they have been militarizing ICE, uh, we are not getting closer to a society in which human life is being preserved or is being is a consideration. I think we're getting to a society where world leaders or people that are in positions of power are becoming more and more arrogant with that power and enacting their power on us to say that actually, even if you try to do something, like, you actually can't really get that far. And another key person or group that is part of this is Anduril, the defense contractor that is working on all of the weaponry that is currently being used around the world to fight all of the wars that we're seeing, including, which I'm sure is very likely, Anduril and Palantir, who provide like the data slash visualization of these kinds of military grade attacks. Those companies being highly influential in giving governments that kind of well, I should say governments, but giving military that kind of power over regular regular countries. Um, what's also been kind of sick about this a little bit that I've noticed like in my research has been that the CEO of Anduril, and well, actually all of these guys, if you guys haven't tuned into like any of my episodes, Anduril is named after like a Lord of the Rings or J.R. Tolkien reference. Palantir is also named after a Lord of the Rings reference. All of like the Peter Thiel, Sam Altman's, basically all the new like AI move is associated with Lord of the Rings in some way. And I've been trying to kind of weed out like what this connection is so far. And I'd love to hear you guys' commentary on this, what you guys think that this connection could be, because I'm kind of like going down this rabbit hole at the moment. But so far I've found that Anduril and these companies that are continue to quote J.R. Tolkien, they keep saying this thing about the enemy is always present there, even when people are not necessarily associating it with that. So, for example, just to give you an example, I believe it was in The Hobbit. There was an enemy in that book, but the people of like the society, they didn't necessarily uh, come in direct contact with the enemy, so kind of had the freedom of being able to say like, oh, we are not necessarily associated, we don't necessarily believe that that enemy exists, even though there are people who are kind of directly in the front lines dealing with that enemy. So the CEO of Anduril, he basically quoted J.R. Tolkien as in like, oh, this is an author that, yes, he was anti-war or he was pro-peace, but he actually definitely cared about there being an enemy, and he wanted to seek out that enemy was real. But in my research of J.R. Tolkien, he actually was served on the front lines of two different wars. Apparently, he was there when one of the first Nazi like gas chambers was used, and he actually was very much strongly opposed to war. He, even though he wouldn't necessarily claim himself to be like super progressive, at the time, he like, I mean, his worlds that he created in his books were like multilingual, multicultural, all those things. And I think it's very telling what these defense contractors are doing when they take a figure like J.R. Tolkien and they kind of pervert his message to mean something different. Like, oh, actually, this guy did not believe in peace. He actually believed in the opposite. of that, and that is so far from what I'm gathering is not actually the truth. But yeah, that is my take on the JR Tolkien. Like I said, I would love to hear your guys' is feedback on what you think that connection could be. But going back to talk more about Venezuela, yeah, the US continues to capture more and more of their oil tankers. I think the US just recently captured the sixth tanker. I believe it was sometime this week, but this is now the fourth ship seized by the US after Nicolas Maduro was captured 2 weeks ago. So the US is slowly trying to capture more and more of that infrastructure so that they can take over the oil industry. And another thing that has been really interesting about this conversation has been comments by Donald Trump and Marco Rubio basically stating that, like, hey, like, we're going to provide Venezuela with everything now. We're going to be the main importer of all of their goods. Yeah, if a country becomes the main importer and exporter of all of your goods, you do not own your own country. So the US is trying to enable more and more of its grip on Venezuela. And the only thing that we can really hope and wish for that population is that the people of Venezuela have the right to elect their own leaders, to decide what happens in their own countries. And it does not seem as though that is going to happen under the guidance of Delcy Rodriguez, the current interim president of Venezuela, which we covered on a previous episode. But it seems like she's kind of working with the Trump administration. And I'm like, that's a little bit funny, especially when it's like somehow Nicolas Maduro was the head of a cartel, but Delcy Rodriguez, his second in command, was not part of that cartel. And we already know from the Nicolas Maduro bounty of, I think it was $25 million or $50 million, one of those two, that somebody is going to become very, very rich in Venezuela. So I'm telling you, once you see one of those people that are close to the cabinet start to claim that money, I mean, it could be a group of people as well. Once you see them starting to buy up a new yacht, a new car, maybe come in like some Dolce and Gabbana outfits, I'm sure those retailers or fashion brands love to sponsor political dissidents or you know political individuals to further their own brands. But once you start seeing that, you're going to start to see who exactly was part of that operation. But yeah, in other news, just kind of closing off this little conversation about Venezuela, there was recently a news article that the European Union and the Mercosur bloc of South America actually worked on a landmark free trade agreement that has been in the works for 25 years. And part of this agreement has basically been that the EU is like, okay, we need to figure out how to not be so reliant on the US and on China. So let's just make strategic deals between us and Latin America directly. And I want to point out that the tides are always turning, okay? Right now, the US and Israel is like seemingly at the top of the food chain, but when you make enemies with everybody, nobody then wants to come to your assistance. So I do feel like the U.S. is in for, has bit off more than it can chew, and the time is seemingly coming. I feel like if you are in the U.S. or you're a U.S. citizen and you're keeping up with the news, like you feel that right now is a time of extensive turmoil. People are waking up to the reality that, like, hey, our groceries are not that much cheaper. Our gas is not that much cheaper. Why are we giving half of our paycheck to the government? Which, by the way, I saw a stat on X, and it said that in ancient Egypt, slaves were had to give 20% of their earnings to the pharaoh, and people were giving commentary on it, like, yeah, the slaves of ancient Egypt are actually doing better than we are because we give more than 20% to our government. So in some way, we are more enslaved than the slaves who built the pyramid. And what did we have to show for it? Some random data center in the middle of the US that is just taking up all of the resources of that area. But just to illustrate to you guys the change of tide is we have also Canada announcing its new deal with China, so that it can actually work together a little bit more closely, because they're like, oh, we actually can't really rely on right now the US to give us like a kind of a clear pathway forward in terms of like what their economic or defense strategy really is. So now Canada is working more with China, and if you are not paying attention, like China is also taking up more and more power in various regions because they're just smarter so far. They've just been better about their diplomacy. Yes, they are a superpower. Yes, they probably have the same military weaponry that the US has, which is why we haven't necessarily been attacking them directly or really saying anything much in that region, because we most likely can't. But they are taking up all of the allies, and I'm kind of here for it, because I'm sick and tired of the US being involved in everything that it needs to be. Like, I want the US to go back to a society where we just kind of lived a little bit more independently. Like, the centralized government didn't have so much power over every single person's life. They weren't spying on us all the time. And that we can go back to like a little bit more of a community-based living model where it's like, yeah, I know my neighbor. Yeah, I have a family. Yeah, okay. Like, we are not as segmented and isolated from each other as we once were. But I mean, the US is going to be attacking Greenland, which is like a NATO ally. So, like I said, at some point there is going to be a breaking point, and these European countries are going to realize, hey, we actually don't really need the US that much. And it is going to happen probably sooner than we can imagine. But the other thing about the US, and if you guys are tuning into this episode and are wondering about this title, about why the US is becoming ghetto, it is because freedom of speech is under attack. And the joke of Caroline Levitt as a press secretary, I want to tell you one thing. When she first started out, I was like, okay, like, she's kind of a little bit badass. She's like not really taking like too much from like the press. But as more and more time progressed, like very, very quickly on, I was like, okay, this girl really is like actually trying to suppress freedom of speech. She's trying to suppress the press. Like, she's trying to intimidate people to just like do propaganda stories on the Trump administration. I'm like, you guys are just a bunch of quacks. But let's go ahead and take a look at what Caroline Levitt said in regards to the murder of Renee Good.
Why was Renee Good unfortunately and tragically killed?
Are you asking me my opinion? Because an ICE agent acted recklessly and killed her unjustifiably.
Oh, okay. So you're a biased reporter with a left-wing opinion.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, because you're a left-wing hack. You're not a reporter. You're posing in this room as a journalist, and it's so clear by the premise of your question. And you and the people in the media who have such biases but fake like you're a journalist, you shouldn't even be sitting in that seat.
I don't even feel like these people are real at some point. It's like, even like Joe Biden's press secretary, the one that's like now coming out with her book, I'm like, is this bitch even a real person? Because she's like up there claiming X, Y, and Z, and like, okay, she's doing it because she's trying to support like the Biden administration. And then we have Caroline Levitt. She's just trying to support the Trump, like whatever that administration says, these people just do it and follow. Like, they have no moral integrity to report actual information to the public. They are just trying to work for their own betterment. And that's what I'm telling you. These people in DC, like, that's all that they're used to doing. Like, they're only used to kissing ass. And then when it's time for them to actually stand up for something, they're dead silent about it. Like, they don't have actually really that much moral high ground. And Caroline Levitt, like, she's also one of those figures that I'm just like, she's a JD Vance figure where it's like, how did you just like happen to get pulled up through the ranks? Like, she had a very small, like a very short political career, which she didn't win for House of Representatives. She also ran for Congress, did not win. She lost to the Democratic candidate for New Hampshire at the time. And then she meets her husband also as part of like this running. Now, I don't want to get too much into her personal life because that's obviously her decision. But when Caroline Levitt was, I believe she was 24 years old when she met her husband, who was at the time 56 years old. Please let me know if I'm doing my math right. But there's at least a 32-year gap. Okay, so if I'm not doing my math right and I'm that much of a dummy head, then you do the math. But 32 years is a long time. And I always question, especially as I've gotten older, I'm like, what does an older person want with like a younger person? Like, what exactly is there? I know that's like a very boomer opinion to have, but I'm like, yeah, there's not really much that someone who's like freshly out of college and you are like a 56-year-old dude that is like well into like towards the end of his career. Um, yes, there's probably more there with these babies, with these people who are in politics. Like, handlers are very much real, you guys, okay? So people get into these people's lives and kind of help shape them because they see, okay, this person does have promise to be in some kind of a political career. Let's go ahead and shape this person. But as you guys saw from that video, if you guys are not familiar with Renee Good, I hope that you guys have already kept up with that. But she was the woman that was shot. It's multiple times, it seems, when she like blocked the passageway or the driveway from the ICE agents, also in Missouri. And she like left. She was a mother of, I believe, three. And so she left behind obviously those children very tragically. And again, instead of the Trump administration owning up to the highly militarized ICE and like the disgusting nature in which they are handling civilians, instead of them condemning that, they are instead trying to rewrite history as Renee Good, this psychopath, when in like, I mean, I didn't feel threatened by her, and I doubt that if I was an ICE agent with like a machine gun. I mean, I don't think they have a machine gun, but if I was an ICE agent with all the weaponry in the world that I have, with 20 other guys with me, with cars or trucks that are pretty much invincible to probably like any kinds of like attack by regular civilian, I think I'd be fine. I think I'd be fine to see this, like, even if I thought this woman was like crazy. Which, by the way, too, I forgot to mention in yesterday's episode, or not yesterday's, but our episode where we covered the Renee Good killing. That same ICE agent, I could kind of wrap my head around the fact that this ICE agent probably has PTSD from a previous incident. I don't know if you guys had heard this in the news. I didn't put two and two together. This was the same ICE agent, but this ICE agent had previously done a traffic stop of some sort, broke the guy's window in and tried to reach in to try to get the car. The guy, like out of panic, started driving away and dragged this ICE agent, like I think it was like 100 yards. He had to get stitches all over. So I was like, okay, I guess he does kind of have a history of being dragged around by a car. So I was like, I kind of can get a little bit of where where he could be coming from. But dude, in that instance and this instance, it sounds like you are very purposefully inciting violence. Like, why are you, like, this is the thing. It's like they don't want us to have an issue with the fact that the ICE agents are, again, masked. You can't look them up very easily because I've tried to see if there's like any national databases, and then they're extremely violent. You can't record them. They'll try to take the phone away from you violently. They'll break your car in. They will do all kinds of things. And these paid antagonizers that like Renee Good is being labeled as, it's like, no, people actually just very much have an issue with the way that you guys are handling this. And the other thing that they have been making light of that I would like to highlight is this whole thing about Donald Trump like canceling elections. Let's go ahead and just play the clip of what Caroline Levitt said in regards to Trump's comment that he was going to cancel the midterms.
President Trump has talked twice in recent days, once at the Kennedy Center and then to Reuters again last night, about canceling the election. Why is he talking about this?
I believe you're referring to the president's interview at Reuters last night. I was in that interview. It was a closed-door interview. Obviously, there was not audio or video. The president was simply joking. He was saying, we're doing such a great job. We're doing everything the American people thought. Maybe we should just keep rolling. But he was speaking facetiously.
As time progresses, I give less and less shits about like who's actually elected because, like I said, they're all quacks. But I think it's still very much concerning when you hear Caroline Levitt share that, hey, like, or not Caroline Levitt, but when Donald Trump is saying, hey, we could be canceling the midterms. Yeah, because they just want more and more control over us. And the other thing that's been interesting about this conversation is like you are going to hear President Trump and all of his circle basically continue to talk about um, mail-in ballots. I want you to know that the future of mail-in ballots is heading towards a completely digitized voting system. And the reason why I'm like, okay, yes, this could make things more accurate. And also, like, I know why the Democrats don't want mail-in ballots. It is partially true that they also want like illegal immigrants to help vote for them and also to help the swing state. Like everybody is in it for the vote or like really the control and the power. But what scares me the most about the digitized ballot is not that it's going to be more accurate or not accurate. It's the fact that it's pretty much going to be controlled again by the same ecosystem people who are trying to control AI, who are trying to build these completely tech native cities, who are trying to turn us into complete digital consumers. And that's what I have a problem with is the fact that, yeah, our elections, even though they don't really mean anything right now, it's like at least there's still people kind of like counting and voting it. Like once everything becomes digitized, I can just at the click of a button change anything, any number, any value, add points here and there. I mean, who is going to be entering like the code base of these systems? Not many people are going to have that level of access. Um, and like I said, people are getting smarter and smarter because they are realizing, hey, our lives are not better. And just to illustrate this point further, we have Pete Hegseth, who is the head of the Department of War, obviously formerly known as the Pentagon. But because of this Somali fraud scandal, which is definitely a fraud issue and needs to be addressed, they have now elected that they are going to be spending probably countless resources investigating line by line every small business that is under this Section 8A policy. So let's go ahead and look at what Pete Hegseth said in regards to this investigation.
We're actually taking a sledgehammer to the oldest DEI program in the federal government, a program few people outside of Washington have ever heard of, that I hadn't heard of. It's called the 8A program. Now, if you're like me, you're asking yourself, what is an 8A? It's a great question. 8A refers to the Small Business Administration's program to assist, quote, small disadvantaged businesses owned by a socially disadvantaged individual or tribe, end quote. Providing these small businesses with opportunities is a laudable goal. But over the decades, as it happens, the 8A program has morphed into swamp code words for DEI, race-based contracting. And here's the worst part. In many, many instances, these socially disadvantaged businesses, they don't even do work. They take a 10%, 20%, sometimes 50% fee off the top and then pass the contract off to a giant consulting firm, commonly known as Beltway bandits.
Now, all of this is good in theory, but I want to ask the obvious question here. Why is the Department of War taking this on as like a primary initiative for them? I keep seeing just instances where the Republican Party that once cared about decentralizing the government, about local economies, state-run governments, is very much doing the opposite of that. In fact, they're trying to have more and more control over what are the businesses that are allowed to be operating in the area. And like I said, with regarding the Somali daycare fraud scandal that is currently going on, it's like, yes, the average American should be able to look at that and say that that is fraud and we should try to rule those things out. But when you start coming for small businesses, uh, and you are doing it under the guise of investigating fraud, as you can hear Pete Hegseth they are targeting really like disadvantaged groups. So that could be a plethora of people. And we're going to get into the history of the U.S. In this series of various different parts of the U.S. history. But I want you to understand that even things like the creation of the poor white man were done intentionally post Civil War in the U.S. Because yeah, when the South lost, the North made them pay for it, and then by the North is becoming more and more these like technocrats, these elites, these people who come from wealthy families that purposefully created this class of poor white Americans that also negatively disenfranchised the already existing like slave population that was going to become integrated with the U.S. population. So these disadvantaged economic classes are oftentimes the direct result of policy meant to intentionally disadvantage those groups. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But if ICE and their current militarization is any indication of the future of our country, then I think that we should be worried. And I think that it is by far time for regular U.S. citizens to fight for their country. Yeah. The other thing that they are trying to dangle in our face is the new affordable, I guess, healthcare programs that are coming in. Now, I want you guys to just keep in mind that the amount that allegedly was pledged here was $2,000 annually that was going to be given to American citizens so that they can pay their insurance premiums directly. And it was going to cut out the middleman of like the insurance companies, like getting like the subsidy for it and then like giving that out. So it's basically they're trying to take apart like the like Obamacare, which I haven't necessarily looked too much into that program. But I think that it's laughable the new healthcare policy that is basically being thrown in our faces as like, oh, like, okay, we're going to give you $2,000 annually. And just to give you guys a reason or another number as to why that $2,000 annually is kind of a joke. Allegedly, the average U.S. healthcare plan is about $28,000 annually. So yeah, $2,000 isn't going to do much to move that needle. But let's go ahead and take a look at what President Trump said when he announced this new initiative.
I'm thrilled to announce my plan to lower healthcare prices for all Americans and truly make healthcare affordable again. We're doing things that nobody's ever been able to do. We're calling it the Great Healthcare Plan. Instead of putting the needs of big corporations and special interests first, our plan finally puts you first and puts more money in your pocket. The government is going to pay the money directly to you. It goes to you, and then you take the money and buy your own health care. Nobody's ever heard of that before, and that's the way it is. The big insurance companies lose, and the people of our country win.
Yeah, this country is definitely in need of some direction because while I do support people having direct access to their funds, it's always, again, it's questionable. Why does the government want to be the one to write that check? Just like COVID, why does the government want to be the one to hand out those checks? Now, am I saying that those checks were not helpful? Of course, they were helpful to the majority of the population because people were not working. So realistically, those checks ended up helping. But what happens shortly after, usually there is money provided directly to the general population, is that inflation is also a byproduct of that. Things get more expensive, which is basically just inflation. But that money is worth less and less really to us because it's just being handed over to us. And there's a book that I've been recently reading that I definitely want to talk more about on this podcast, but it's The History of Money. I believe it's titled The History of Money, The History of Mankind. But basically it outlines the entire trajectory that money has taken, both in kind of like an ancient civilization context, but also in the context of the US and exactly how money has kind of diluted over time to being first like based off gold, then being based off silver, then being based off a note, which is what we have now, is basically just a note from the Federal Reserve. And these organizations, the Federal Reserve, the IRS, yeah, they pretty much control our country, and they do it in the guise of being like nonpartisan. But really, what that also means is that our politicians have no control in removing the leadership from there, having the leadership under a little bit more regulation and guidance. And it's hard to say, honestly, because all of this has always been a vie for power. Like, if the US is not the one that's vying for power, then it's China, then it's another country. And so it's like human civilization, civilians are always going to be under the thumb of power. And I just wish for the US, just like I wish for Venezuela, that the people actually have a say in their country. Like, what happened to the US middle class? What happened to people being able to afford their home? What happened to like I said in the last podcast, the hippie movement in the 70s? Like, we used to care about peace. We used to just want to do our own thing and listen to the Beatles and, just chill out after a long day of work. And it's like, now everybody's working. Now everybody's enslaved. Now we have to work for 62 years, according to Dr. Oz, which we're going to get into at the end of this video. But yeah, they want us to work for longer and longer and just be slaves. And I'm not down for it. Okay. I personally would like to live my own life and not be bound to work. But before we jump back into the video, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who is watching us, whether you're catching us live. Thank you so much for everybody who's joining us or who joined us for today's episode, or you are catching us later on. Please go ahead and support us on our various social media platforms. We post episodes, or we have episodes weekly on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon podcasts. I believe I said that correctly. Sometimes I switch Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music. I think that's the actual correct way to say it. But in other news, I am not really happy to report, but I have been talking about AI, Elon Musk, Sam Altman, excuse me, that whole group of people for some time now. And Elon Musk is now officially suing Sam Altman for, changing the original concept of OpenAI from being a nonprofit company to being a for-profit company. And that has been by intention pretty much since the beginning. But the thing that is laughable, it's like I said, it's a bittersweet moment, because it's like the reality is Elon Musk just wants to own OpenAI, and he's part of that same group of Peter. Well, he's not really part of that group. They actually really despise him, which is why they end up kicking him out of OpenAI. But he's part of that group of technocrats who basically just want to rule the world, who are all mysteriously from South Africa, who have no recordable ties to previous Nazi regime, even though their parents specifically moved them to South Africa for that particular reason, so that they could be educated in an apartheid country or community. But this is what Elon Musk had to say on his X in regards to the OpenAI lawsuit. Elon Musk said, he said, "I can't wait to start the trial. The discovery and testimony will blow your mind." And I'm all about rich people fighting each other, because the more they fight each other, it's like Elon Musk is actually able to go toe-to-toe financially with Sam Altman. Neither of them are going to bankrupt each other. So I'm like, the more they expose, the more we actually know about the inner workings of that group. And Sam Altman responded both on OpenAI's platform and also on his X with just this little emoji of the drowning, or I guess the melting face. But in this post, he shared a snippet from the filing. So in the filing, it said, Musk insisted that any new entity support the nonprofit mission, and that OpenAI remain essentially a philanthropic endeavor. And then there's this, if you're listening into this, they highlighted essentially a philanthropic endeavor. And I guess there's an AI reading of it below that says that Elon, coming weeks, top priority, got to figure out how we do the transition from nonprofit for something which is essentially philanthropic endeavor and is a B Corp or C Corp or something. Must tell a story and not lose moral high ground. Absolutely vital. This is apparently from 2017 call notes with Elon Musk. So I guess like if you guys have ever used like one of those like AI note takers, I'm assuming that this is where those call notes are coming from, and that I guess Sam Altman is using some kind of like chat GPT technology to say like, okay, like Elon Musk is saying this, let's quantify that under like our entire database of his notes. Yeah, Elon Musk most likely was part of the planning for OpenAI for it to always become a for-profit company. We've covered it on this show, but basically that entire entourage had always been involved in VC. And if you're not familiar with VC, it's like the goal of VC is to find companies or to find ideas to then invest into. And then it's like the best one that, the one that is performing the best, they then therefore go in and like take control of that business and basically like run it to do whatever they want to. And Sam Altman was a part of the group of people who were involved in getting OpenAI like that initial set of talent, because OpenAI was a new company and they did not have the bandwidth to afford the best and the brightest that were going to companies like Meta, to Google, or that were working as part of the government. They basically became a non-profit entity so that people that were mission oriented, like scientists of AI, would then go to work for a company like OpenAI for not that much money, do free labor, and then once the company turns to for profit, the investors of that company, the owners of that company, the board of trustees would actually be the one to benefit financially from this like super innovative technology. Like I said, they were pulling the best and the brightest. Even that guy that was assassinated after he was a whistleblower of OpenAI, Suchir Balaji, he was a prodigy, at least was cited so by his parents, that won like multiple like coding programming awards, that worked for OpenAI because he cared about the mission, that was interested in AI. So a lot of these guys that were involved in OpenAI in its initial conception like had a hand in ensuring that it would make money in the future. Even now, what is being discovered in this initial discovery period was that Sam Altman funded OpenAI indirectly through, at that time, Y Combinator. That was his VC firm. So Sam Altman always had a pocket or a hand in the finances of OpenAI, even though at the time he would claim like, "Oh, I never took any money. Oh, I never did this. Oh, I pay everybody. I actually only make $70,000." Yeah. Meanwhile, he is driving around in luxury vehicles that are worth far more than that. But let's take a look at this laughable testimony by Sam Altman. This was done May 16, 2023, and this is when Sam Altman, I guess his company was being, or he was being asked to testify in front of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. So this is what Sam Altman said in regards to the amount of money that he does not make actually from OpenAI.
You make a lot of money, do you?
No. I paid enough for health insurance. I have no equity in OpenAI.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You need a lawyer.
I need a what?
You need a lawyer or an agent.
I'm doing this because I love it.
Yes, they do it because they love it, just like Elon Musk, just like Peter Thiel. They just love to advance human society, and there's really nothing much in it for them. So like, don't go looking. But if you want to drive yourself crazy, I tell you, just go watch a bunch of Sam Altman videos, and you will just see that this guy is like, it doesn't matter the audience that's in front of him. He is going to tell that audience exactly what they want to hear, while in the background, most likely, he is working on his own strategy to advance himself and his initiatives or personal investments. But yeah, Sam Altman has really proven to himself just to be kind of like a dirty player in this whole game. And I think that's the overall trend that you see with these guys that are in like big tech, is that they're kind of just the ones that are willing to play dirty. They're willing to take over companies. They're willing to undermine people. You'll see with a lot of these guys, whenever they kick out somebody from being a CEO, board of trustees, like they always do it like when the person's on vacation. Okay, these guys are not necessarily over here trying to win people over professionally. Like they're trying to advance their own endeavors by any means necessary. But just to illustrate this a little bit further for you, Sam Altman recently announced actually that the free version of ChatGPT is now going to have test ads. Now, I'm not going to bore you with reading through this entire thing, but I will highlight here just a couple of things. Sam Altman says here that here are our principles. Most importantly, we will not accept money to influence the answer ChatGPT gives you, and we can keep your conversations private from advertisers. It goes down to say at the bottom, an example of ads I like are on Instagram, where I found stuff I like that I otherwise never would have. We will try to make ads even more useful to users. And what this could mean is basically just like Google, just like these large companies that use and sell your data to just sell you more and more things, is ChatGPT is pretty much promising you, hey, whatever data that you give us, we're going to actually take that data and we're going to use it, and we're going to make sure that we advertise things directly to you. You guys do not buy those things. People who are buying off TikTok Shop, people who are just giving into this world of consumerism, you need to understand that your dollar is actually very, very powerful to these people. And the more and more they convince you that you need this kind of a thing, that you cannot live without it, like ChatGPT. Yeah, ChatGPT has effed me over more times than it hasn't. In my personal usage of it, I don't trust it. I don't even trust it to, like I've said many times, I don't trust it to read a friggin' Excel file for me. Okay, I need to make sure that I comb through that myself nowadays. But I will say that I do use ChatGPT. I do actually use it, and I do think that there is a use for AI in our society. But the way that these guys are wielding it, it's like they're acting like it's going to benefit our society, and it's like it's pretty much doing the opposite. And it's not even doing the opposite in a way that we personally are asking for. Like like Grok AI, they're allowing regular people to make images, pornographic images of each other. Let's pull up that image of Peter Griffin again, because I think this perfectly illustrates. Yeah, I saw recently an app that would put a video of somebody, like you give them a video and then it like simulates an affair that you're having. Why would anybody in their right mind do that? But people are doing. I've seen people put themselves in a bunch of AI stuff, and I'm like, why would you just give your image or likeness like that easily over? But it doesn't even matter anymore. Like I said, with Grok AI, it's like, yeah, now somebody could just put your image on there. So I don't even really care anymore about like what those things generate. But I will commit to you guys that I will try to limit as much AI slop that we put on this channel, that will really only share stuff that is essential to understand any story. But yeah, I'm not in the business of disseminating like AI generated content. But flipping back over to Sam Altman and his new desire to put ads on ChatGPT. Yeah, this was Sam Altman a couple of years ago talking about ads.
I kind of think of ads as like a last resort for us for a business model. I would do it if it meant that was the only way to get everybody in the world like access to great services. But if we can find something that doesn't do that, I'd prefer that.
Sam Altman, stop fucking up my Excel file, please, okay? This guy, again, he would only do something like that if we are needing those services for the betterment of humanity. I don't think that people really need them like that badly, okay? Like the free version of it, I guess, was working just fine, but yeah, that's never enough for these business people, because they actually don't care about the philanthropy. They don't care about the innovations of the technology. They don't care about actually advancing human civilization. They care about their own money, their own pockets getting filled. And these guys, like, again, it's irritating, because when you look into it, I'm like, they're just glorified, I don't want to say gangsters, but they're glorified, like, I guess, like mobsters in some way, because they like Sam Altman and OpenAI, they're the ones that are building the data centers. Then NVIDIA is providing the chips, and then Oracle is then providing the grant to OpenAI to do that. And then it's just this money of like a lot of people have reported on this, but this money of $100 billion, maybe not 100 billion, $100 million is just getting passed around by these groups, and everybody's getting richer, and everybody's getting richer that is a part of that top of that company. But where's the technology? Where's the humanoid robots? Where's the mission to Mars, Elon Musk, that you promised? Where's the mission to the moon that for some reason, even though we did it with less technology almost like 2 decades ago, we have not really like made much progress in that endeavor. So I would like to see more, and I'm claiming that I want to see more. But if the world of AI has not scared you enough, they are trying to pass this on to us like a bad coronavirus. But yeah, they're trying to pass on to us that the AI doctors in Alabama are somehow good for women. Like, just to give you guys some context, there was a press release with Donald Trump, with JFK Jr., and also with Dr. Oz. And they were talking about this new initiative that they're working on in like rural America for women who did not have as much access to nurses or maternity care. And so in place of creating actual jobs in that region for nurses to maybe come to that region to actually assist, I guess AI is having its dirty little hand in that region. But let's go ahead and see what Dr. Oz announces as this marvelous new initiative.
Alabama has no OBGYNs in many of their counties. So they're doing something pretty cool. They're actually having robots do ultrasounds on these pregnant moms. So we can actually get those images back to the big center. So we know if the child has a problem, and we know if that mother's at risk. We have one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the world, in the country with the best medicine in the world. It's often stated, people ask, does healthcare stink in America? Well, they don't like it. Would you leave America to get healthcare elsewhere? Nobody leaves. We have the best healthcare if you can get to it. We don't want rural America left behind anymore.
Yeah, people don't want to leave because you've convinced them that America has the world's greatest healthcare. And in reality, American healthcare is just a rotation of prescriptions. American healthcare is families going bankrupt when somebody has a life-threatening illness just to save that person's life. That is America. And now we are supposed to be excited about AI doctors slash nurses performing maternity care. Like he mentioned, the U.S. has a high mortality rate of childbirth, and so why would they think that an AI doctor could replace an actual human physician or a doctor for these women? Really, in reality, it seems as though we are just converting, like I said, to a world in which we are giving up more and more data on ourselves. And that is what this AI doctor, I think, is purporting itself to do. But it's very scary. It's very odd. And yeah, I reject it. I think what I've also learned more and more as I've gotten older is that childbirth is actually very, 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 it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very dangerous. It can actually be it could actually be very dangerous for both the mother and the newborn baby. And there's actually a lot of childbirth deaths that happen in the US. I haven't gotten the overall stats on that. Maybe we could pull that and put it in the chat, how many childbirth deaths there are in the US annually. And but I've seen it happen a little bit more commonly with my own eyes, just small news stories that pop up in local jurisdictions. And I'm like, okay, very interesting that we are now considering AI as a practical healthcare option for maternity care. But let's go ahead and look at this other video. This is another video with Dr. Oz talking a little bit more about this subject.
If we're able to get the average American, who today retires on average at age 61, get them just to work 1 year longer, because they feel so vital, so strong, so bullish about their future, because they're feeding their bodies nutrients that are essential to their high-functioning productivity, we will increase the overall GDP of our nation by trillions of dollars. So we will reduce healthcare expenses. At the same time, we jazz up the U.S. economy with trillions of dollars created by the productivity of American workers.
Yeah, someone did a calculation on this on X, and they're like, wait, if the population works one more year and they generate trillions of dollars, and the US GDP is like 30 something trillion, according to this calculation, the US GDP should be about like $500 trillion if that is what the workforce is able to make. But of course, we do not see that in our cities. I think that a lot of US citizens are tired of seeing their money go to places like foreign wars, to go to everywhere else but building better infrastructure, education systems, healthcare systems that US citizens currently pay for in their taxes. Yeah, we do not see that. We do not see our quality of life improving. And people like Dr. Oz, who at this point I'm like, is this dude like some kind of quack doctor that is worried about the GDP of the US when he's supposed to be worried about, I guess, like healthcare initiatives? I don't think he's worried at all about any of those things that actually impact the average American. He's like, no, we actually want you to work longer. You should work one more year than you should. I think that if you've given yourself about 40 plus years of your life to working, and you're not with, like, you weren't with your kids during that time that you're working, both you and your partner were away from home, your kids are just, meandering through their life, and then they can't afford to buy anything for themselves. I think people can afford one less year of work. But our government is not interested in that. They're not interested in actually properly investigating where the finances are going. Why is so much of our money being funneled to things that, like I said, do not benefit the American population? But they are not ready for that kind of an investigation. They're just like, how could we stretch more and more money out of you guys? But thank you guys so much for joining today's episode. I want to leave you guys off with our tips inbox. If you guys do run into anything that you guys want us to cover, or any tips that you guys want us to look into for any of our episodes, we're happy to look into any of those additional leads. Like I said, we do not shy away from any topics, so please write to us at therealkevinm.info@gmail.com. Thank you guys again so much for hanging out with us tonight, whether you guys caught us live or you guys caught us afterwards. We want to thank you guys. Like I said, you could check out our podcast and find new episodes every single week on various different platforms. So we will be making more content for you guys very soon. So thank you guys so much.